And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio. This is a Wednesday evening live broadcast. We stream out of Athens, Georgia, East Coast, United States of America from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. And as always, it's my great honor to be joined by you this evening for fellowship. We will continue to look at all things esoteric and to examine the illusion parading as reality. This evening will be a follow up on what I had um, covered 2 weeks ago when talking about the testimony of a South African Sangoma Sanusi Credo Mutwa, who is, along with some other members of his family, and his great aunt, he and her being the only two living, well, both have since this testimony came out, have, I believe, passed on. Credo was 90 years old about a decade ago, and his aunt was even older, and whether they had apprenticed anybody else into this knowledge and passed it on, uncertain. Um, but without a doubt, he was a prominent voice when it came to the esoteric truths of what is revealed in the scripture and how it ties into and is associated with what we are contending with as world. And it also confirms the first prophecy contained in the Bible in Genesis 3:15, with there being enmity between what is referenced as the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and that there are, in fact, two bloodlines here upon the world, one dedicated to evil, the other to light, and that these two bloodlines, lineages, progenies, have been at contention with one another going all the way back to the garden with the murder of Abel by his half brother Cain. And that what we see currently is this bloodline, the children of Cain, the children of the serpent, working from the shadows covertly to press and oppress humanity, the rest of humanity, as far as the children of Adam, the seed of the woman, and that the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness and spiritual wickedness in high places, they are the Oz behind the mask, which has been manipulating for very long time now and orchestrating the collective fate and destiny of humanity and pushing us towards what is revealed in the scripture as the final beast kingdom. And that in this day and age, certainly we are seeing the plot of what they have even written about and what they have spoken about in the Illuminati secret covenant, the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, the occult technology of power, that the controlled controlled opposition, the false left-right paradigm, the order out of chaos, the ensuing madness and slaughter, an economic crisis that would bring industry worldwide to a standstill, and then the madness spilling onto the streets of America, that there would be racial wars and tensions, and the minorities coming against one another as the madness spreads, and the looting and all of that has been written about for hundreds of years, and now we find it taking precedence in the realities that we all live, wherever you may be in whichever part of the world. That this is something that is not centered on any one nation, but that, you know, a particular event, in this case, the murder of George Floyd, that this was a catalyst and was a opportunity for the elites to subjugate, subvert, and usurp what is the movements of social justice, and taking them from nonviolent protests into utter chaos, that now we see emerging what is the underpinnings of the whole Orwellian brave new world, and that the 1984 police state tyranny and the boogeyman of which to blame and point the finger of terrorists and identifying an enemy, that all these things are playing out in exactly the manner which the elite have wanted and struggled to create, and certainly they have succeeded in doing so. And so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about and share a little bit more with regard to the whole concept of the prior times. And I guess I should first give update. And I'd like to thank those individuals that have reached out that wanted to help. I do have the hard drive, which had so much of my information saved, and which has the latest versions of the two books that I had been working on and busy wanting to release. One which was mostly complete, the Vestures of Light and the Rod of Wonder. I know that there's some things that I need to correct and smooth over with that particular edition, but also the Pre-Adamite book that I had added much information before that system went down and I was unable to access the file. I'm hoping that to hear back any day now as to whether they were successful in pulling off that information and saving it to another place. And so keep praying that they are successful in doing so. And should that happen, I should be able to, within a week of receiving the information, then be able to get the Word file converted into PDF and release it for publication. And so many of you have already pre-ordered this particular book, and I am hoping to, again, get it out to you as soon as possible. I do believe it will be the foremost authority on this particular topic, and only because it will include much which anybody that's writing about these topics and that I've heard speaking about them, they've not included a lot of what will be released for the first time, even an excerpt from the Book of Navi, which is part of the Thracian Chronicles. And those of you that know and have followed my work know that the Thracian Chronicles are not yet available in English, and that they are still being worked on as far as the translation of them. And but I have received the blessing of the Thracian Church to release at least a portion of this text for the first time into print, and it's specific to this particular topic. And so I'm excited to include it in the last chapter of this book. And that, thank you, Marshall, who will be joining me in broadcast sometime very soon. He's the editor of what is the Coleman Bible, and that releasing one of those versions. He is also the one that released the Scroll of Thothus, which is included within that huge book of wisdom text, and it is also specific to the Atlantean myth and that of the reign of the dragon lords in the prior times. And he has also approved me being able to share that with you as community. And so I am excited to include that material within this book as well. And so those of you that have followed the numerous shows that I've done, I mean, there must have been the world that then was, and for this they are willingly ignorant. I know I did a 2 or 3 part on each of those topics, and then the prior times, and then the reign of the dragon lords, and now this material on the testimony of Credo Mutwa. That there's been a lot of information, and all of it specific to this particular book. And I wanted to, make sure that it was out there, not only to pique your interest and to give you an idea of those things that I had been writing about and writing upon, but I also wanted to give you, the information by radio, because I know a lot of you don't like to read and aren't, ones to sit down and read a 400-page book, which this book will be in excess of that, as is a lot of my other books. And I'm sorry that, I find it difficult to write very short books. But I want to pack as much information into a single binding as I can, and to give it to you all in one publication, one format, without you having to buy multiple books or smaller series of manuscripts. I just put it all together in one and make it all available to you in that, one format. And so, but I know that some of you do appreciate and are not intimidated by larger manuscripts. I know others not so much. But, it is what it is. At least these books that we do release through Sacred Word Publishing, they are of larger format as far as, being printed in 14-point font, which is larger, and so it makes the reading easier and also um, quicker. And it's, in my opinion, it's less tiresome and cumbersome to study in, when you're researching a topic and reading a manuscript and looking towards source, that to be able to find it in a larger font. Certainly my eyes and reading and putting together material over these now um, almost well, I published my first book when I was 22, and so I'm 49 now, and so getting close to almost 3 decades of writing. And so anyways, we're going to be going into the work of Credo Mutwa, and I'm going to be sharing from an interview that he had conducted with another gentleman named Rick Martin, who writes for Nexus magazine. And the other one that I had shared from and read from in the previous broadcast is one that is more familiar, that people are more aware of the contents of that material, in that he had conducted that interview with David Icke, and Icke, having written numerous books as well, had released portions of his conversations in those books, and many were, more aware of what was said within the context of those discourses. However, this particular interview is one that is less known about, and one which people are less aware. And so, and it was a very long interview, and so there's no way I'm going to be able to cover all of it. But I will, and I have gone through and highlighted certain aspects. And so it will be specific to the topic of the Dragon Lords and how they ruled in the ancient times. All right, so we'll start with this. Our readers are aware of the existence of the shape-shifting reptilian extraterrestrials, and what I would like to discuss with you concerns the specifics of their presence, their leadership, their agenda, and their methods of operation at this time. And so the first question I would like to ask you is, can you confirm that shape-shifting reptilian extraterrestrials do in fact exist on our plane of existence at this time? It says planet, but I'm taking the liberty to reveal to you the truth of cosmology as well. And if they do, if you can confirm this, will you please be specific about them? Where do they come from? Credo Mutwa. The people of Rwanda, the Hutu people, as well as the Watusi people state, and they are not the only people in Africa who state this, that their very oldest ancestors were a race of beings whom they call the Emmanuela, which means the Lords who have come. And some tribes in West Africa, such as the Bambara people, also say the same thing. They say that they came from the sky many, many generations ago, a race of highly advanced and fearsome creatures which look like men, and they call them the Ziswezi. The word Ziswezi means the Dival or the glidal, creatures that can glide down from the sky or glide through water. Everybody, sir, has heard about the Dogon people in the Western Africa country who all say that they were given culture by the Nomo beings. But they are not the Dogon people, are but one of many, many people in Africa who claim that their tribe or their king were first founded by the supernatural race of creatures that came from the sky. The Zulu people, who are famous as a warrior people, the people to whom King Ashaka Zulu of the last century belonged. When you ask a South African white anthropologist what the name of Zulu means, he will say it means the sky. And therefore the Zulu call them the people themselves, the people of the sky. But that, sir, is nonsense. In the Zulu language, our name for the sky, the blue sky, is Sibakabaka. Our name for interplanetary space, however, is Izulu. And the Waduzulu, which means interplanetary space. The dark sky that you see with stars in it every night also has to do with traveling, sir. The Zulu word for traveling at random like a nomad or a gypsy is Izula. Now, you can see that the Zulu people in South Africa were aware of the fact that you can travel through space, not through the sky like a bird, but you can travel through space. And the Zulus claim that many, many thousands of years ago, there arrived out of the skies a race of people who were like lizards, people who could change shape at will, and people who married their daughters to a walking extraterrestrial and produced a power race of kings and tribal chiefs. There are hundreds of fairy tales, sir, in which a lizard female assumes the identity of a human princess and poses as her and gets married to a Zulu prince. Every schoolchild in South Africa knows about the story of a princess called Kombenkasini. Kombenkasini. Kombenkasini was to have married a handsome prince called Kakaka, a name which means the enlightened one. Now, one day while Kombenkasini was gathering firewood in the bush, she met a creature called an Mbulu. And this Mbulu was a lizard which has the body and the limbs of a human being, but with a long tail. And this lizard spoke to Princess Combekansini. Oh, how beautiful you are, girl. I wish I could be like you. I wish I could look like you. Can I come close to you? Said the Mbulu, the lizard woman, to the princess. And the princess said, yes, you can. And as the lizard, which was a taller one, came close to the girl, she spat into the girl's eyes, and she began to change. That is, the lizard woman suddenly changed into a human shape, and this lizard began to look more and more and more and more like the human girl, with the exception that she had a long, pointed tail. And then, with her sudden burst of violence, the lizard woman sealed the princess and removed all of her bangles and her beads and her wedding skirt off of her, and she put them on. Thus, the lizard woman became the princess. Now, there were two identical women in the bush, the shape shifting lizard woman and the original woman. And the lizard woman said to the original woman, now you are my slave. Now you are going to accompany me to the marriage. I will be you and you will be my slave. Come now. She took a stick and started beating up the poor princess. And then she went, accompanied by the other girls, who were bridesmaids according to Zulu custom. And she arrived at Prince Kakaka's village. But before they reached the village, she had to do something about her tail. That is, the shape-shifting woman had somehow to hide her tail. So she forced the princess to weave a net out of fiber, and she tucked the tail in, and she tied it tight to herself. She now looked like a Zulu woman with an attractive and very big buttocks when seen from the outside. And then, when she arrived and she became the wife of the prince, a strange thing started happening in the village. All of the milk started disappearing because each night the shape-shifting princess, the false princess, used to release her tail, which used to suck in all of the sour milk through a hole at the tip of the tail. And the mother-in-law said, what is this? Why is the milk disappearing? Then she said, no, I see there is an ambula amongst us. The mother-in-law, who was a clever old lady, said, a hole must be dug in the front of the village, and it must be filled with milk. And this was done. And then all of the girls who had come with the false princess were told to jump over this hole. One after the other one they jumped, and when the shapeshifter was forced at spear point to jump as well, as she jumped, her long tail burst out of the net under her skirt and started slurping the milk through the hole. And the warriors killed the shapeshifter. And thus the real princess Combekassini became the wife of the kings, Kakaka. Now, sir, this story has got many versions in it. Throughout South Africa, amongst many tribes, you'll find stories of these amazing creatures who are capable of changing from reptile to human being, and from reptile to any other animal of their choice. And these creatures, sir, do really exist. No matter where you go throughout southern, eastern, western, and central Africa, you'll find that the description of these creatures is all the same. Even amongst tribes which never, throughout their long history, had contact with each other at all. And so, there are such creatures. Where they come from, I will never claim to know. But they are associated with certain stars in the sky. And one of these stars is a large group of stars which is part of the Milky Way, which our people call Ingyab, which means the great serpent. And there is a red star, a reddish star, near the tip of this huge rim of stars, which our people call Insona Nyamba. Now, this star called Insona Nyamba, I managed to find its English name. It is the star called Alpha Centauri in English. Now, this star, sir, is something that is worth investigating. Why is it that well over 500 tribes in parts of Africa, which I visited in the last 40 or 50 years or so, all of them describe similar creatures? It is said that these creatures feed on us, human beings, that they at one time challenged God Himself to war because they wanted full control of the universe. And God fought a terrible battle against them, and He defeated them, injured them, and forced them to hide in cities underground. They hide in deep cavities underground because they are always feeling cold. In these cavities, we are told there are huge fires which are kept going by slaves, human, zombie like slaves. And it is further said that these Zuswazi, these Imbulu, or whatever you choose to call them, are not capable of eating solid food. They either eat human blood or they eat that power, the energy that is generated when human beings on the surface of the earth are fighting and killing each other in large numbers. I met a people who have fled from the early Masaki in Rwanda from years ago. And these people were horrified by what was happening in their country. They said that the slaughter of the Hutus by the Watusi and the Watusi by the Hutus is actually feeding the Emanuela monsters. Because the Emanuela like to inhale the energy that is generated by masses of people being terrified or being killed by other peoples. Now, let me point out an interesting thing, sir. If you study the language of all African nations, you find within the languages of our people words which are similar to Oriental, Middle Eastern, and even Native American words. And the word Emmanuela means the Lord who came, a word that anyone can discover in Rwanda amongst the Rwandan Hutu and Watusi people. It's very similar to the Hebrew word Emmanuel, which means the Lord is with us. Emmanuela, the ones who came, the Lords who are here, is what it means. Our people believe, sir, that we, the people of this earth, are not masters of our own lives. Really, although we are made to think that we are, our people say that black people of all tribes, all of the initiated ones, all of the shamans everywhere, in Africa, when they get to trust you and share their deepest secrets with you, they say that with the Emanuela, there is Mbulu. And there is another name by which these creatures are known. This name is Chitauli. Now, the word Chitauli means the dictators, the ones who tell us the law. In other words, they who tell us secretly what we are to do. Now, it is said that these Chitauli did a number of things to us when they came to this planet. Please forgive me, and also let me also tell you that as I'm reading through this interview, that there are portions which I have excluded and I have left out, and so when I read, if a paragraph sounds weird in picking up the story, that's probably because there's a portion that I excluded that was not specific to the topic of the Dragon Lords. And there are a number of different, as far as the whole interview, like the story of the destruction of Africa, the creation of AIDS, even Credo Mutwa's own abduction experience, and also how he had ceremoniously, ritually partaken of the eating of what was a piece of flesh from a gray alien. And that having consumed this particular piece of flesh, it had hallucinogenic properties and almost led him to his death. And it heightened his senses over several months' time to such degree that the experience was extremely profound for him. And he has described so in his testimony. But I'm just, again, excluding some aspects of the interview and trying to stay specific to the topic of the Dragon Lords, and as it pertains to the prior times and even to modern times and how they currently do rule over as the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness and the wickedness, the spiritual wickedness in high places. And so, returning to the story. Please forgive me, but I must share this story with you. It is one of the strangest stories that you find everywhere in Africa, in shamanic secret societies and other places, where the remnant of our ancient knowledge and wisdom are still preserved. It is that originally, and this is very interesting because this is specific to a passage in the Bible, which I'll share with you, but it's talking about the prior times. And this is also found in my book as well. It is that originally the earth was covered by a very thick blanket of fog or mist that people could not actually see the sun in the sky except as a nimble of light. And they also saw the moon at night as a gentle claw of light in the sky, because there was this heavy mist, and the rain was always falling in a steady drizzle. There was no thundering, however. There were no storms. The world was thickly covered with great forests, great jungles, and people lived in peace on earth at that time. People were happy, and it is said at that time, we human beings did not have the power of speech. We only made funny sounds like happy monkeys and baboons, but we did not have speech as we now have it. And in those centuries, people spoke to each other through their minds. Now, consider what I just read from when I share this passage from the Bible. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew. For the Lord God had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. But there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living soul. And the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden. And there he put the man whom he had formed. And so, this thing about the plant of the field, every herb of the field before it grew, the Lord God had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not yet a man to till the ground. But there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. I'm going to read that account from Credo once more. In shamanic secret societies and other places where the remnant of our ancient knowledge and wisdom are still preserved, it is that originally the earth was covered by a very thick blanket of fog or mist, that the people could not actually see the sun in the sky except as a nimble of light. And they also saw the moon at night as a gentle claw of light in the sky. And because there was this heavy mist and the rain was always falling in a steady drizzle, there was no thunder, however. There were no storms. The world was thickly covered with great forests, great jungles, and people lived in peace on earth at that time. People were happy, and it is said, at that time we human beings did not have the power of speech. We only made funny sounds like happy monkeys and baboons, but We did not have speech as we now have it. And in those centuries, people spoke to each other through their minds. A man could call his wife thinking about her, thinking about the shape of her face, the smell of her body, and the feel of her hair as a woman. That a hunter would go out into the bush and call out for animals to come, and the animals would select one of their number, which was old and tired, and this animal would offer itself to the hunter so that he may kill it quickly and take it as meat to his cave. There was no violence against animals at that time. There was no violence against nature by human beings at that time. Man used to ask for food from nature. He used to come to a tree and think about fruit, and the tree would allow some of its fruit to fall to the ground, and man would take it. And then it is said, however, that when the Chitauli came to the earth, they arrived in terrible vessels, which flew through the air, vessels which were shaped like great bowls, and which made a terrible noise and a terrible fire in the sky. And then the Chitauli told human beings whom they gathered together by force with whips of lightning that they were great gods from the sky, and that from now on they would receive a number of great gifts from the God, from them as gods. These so-called gods, who were like human beings but very tall, with a long tail and with terrible burning eyes. Some of them had 2 eyes, yellow, bright eyes. Some had 3 eyes, the red round eye being in the center of their foreheads. These creatures then took away the great powers that human beings had, the power of speaking through the mind only, the power of moving objects with their mind only, the power of seeing into the future and into their past, the power to travel spiritually to different worlds. All of these great powers that Chitauli took away from human beings. And they gave human beings a new power, now the power of speech. But human beings found to their horror that the power of speech divided the human beings instead of uniting them, because the Chitauli cunningly created different languages, and they caused a great quarrel between peoples. Also, the Chitauli did something which has never been done before. They gave human beings people to rule over them. And they said, these are your kings. These are your chiefs. They have our blood in them. They are our children. And you must listen to these people because they will speak on our behalf. If you don't, we are going to punish you very terribly. Before the coming of the Chitauli, before the coming of the Imbulu creatures, human beings were spiritually as one. So you can see how disruptive and tragic was the fall of the angels and their imposition upon humanity, and that their effort was to enslave the Pre-Adamites, that lived here upon the world. It was difficult for those that were alive at that time to not get caught up in the influence of these particular deities. And that being as powerful as they were and as ruthless as they were, it was easy for them to establish themselves, to deceive us, and to make themselves, in being like the Most High, to become the pantheon of gods and goddesses by which the antediluvian peoples worldwide accepted as their gods and goddesses, even to the point that they would offer up their brothers, their sisters, their parents, their children in blood and ritual sacrifice. That's how deceptive the strategy of these powers, principalities, these rulers of darkness, how ruthless they were in establishing their control and the matrix of control in imposing their will over us. And when we return from the break, I will read the passage from the Emerald Tablets, which those of you that are familiar with my work, you know that it is one of my most favored passages, but it's so important for you to become familiar with these words. They will help you to make sense of what is going on. And again, it is confirming witness to the bizarre nature of what we are dealing with even in this day and age. Because we see the beast system, the beast kingdom coming to power. And soon, without a doubt, we will have the coming reign of the Antichrist. And so I'll share that when we return from break. But again, this is ancient tradition. I mean, even the Bible, that Genesis passage speaks about, it's a flashback to what I believe is the prior times, the ancient, what is called Zeptepe, the first times, when the demigods ruled here upon the earth. And so, in my mind, the Bible here is, confirming the testimony of Credo and the wisdom that he was passed down by his people and by these shamans that also received this ancient wisdom, this ancient knowledge before him. All right, we'll be right back, everybody, for second hour.
The seeker of lost paradise may seem a fool to those who have never sought the other worlds. Christ told us in Revelation 2, "Remember from whence thou art fallen, and do the first works." What many people don't realize about the fall of humanity is that Adam and Eve were initially bright-natured and that they were placed into the garden of God to dress and tend it, and that being deceived and tempted and eating from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that in that moment that you touch thereof you shall die, that they come under the authority of death in those moments, and since their fall have been banished from the place of the immortals. This concept becomes very clear in the work of the forgotten Edenic books of Adam and Eve. And as we study and read into this material, this knowledge will come to light, and it will help you to understand that being restored to our bright nature, our first estate through Christ, that the reason he had to take on embodiment and enter into mortal flesh form was in order to not only redeem the ancestors of Adam, the children of light, but also to rectify us and to restore us to our first estate in this manner, defeating death and bringing forth salvation with the promise of the cross.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures. Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit
Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio. And so I want to clarify, I did see in the chat room, which when we get to the breaks, I do have a little opportunity to look through the chat and to try to address your questions. So if you do have questions during the break, try to list them there and I will, try to address them. But to clarify who I'm talking about with the Dragon Lords, these are the pre-Nephilim. These are the fallen angels that rebelled against the Most High, that went to even, I had read about how Credo talked about how these beings went to war against their God, and that they were cast out of the heavens for having done so. Now, you can find confirmation of these particular deities, these particular beings, in both the New Testament, where Christ says in Luke chapter 10, verse 18, I saw Satan like lightning fall from the heaven. And that was because it was Yeshua, the Word, that had cast him out when they rebelled against him. And this you can find confirmed in the second book of Enoch, chapters 29 and 30, which I will read from right here to give you an idea as to how far this goes back. And again, it was after the rebellion which took place in the first day, the creation of the angels, the rebellion, the war in heaven happened, and the earth being destroyed. All that happened in the ancient times. And so, from chapter 29 and 30, the book of the secrets of Enoch, it says, and one from out of the order of angels, having turned away with the order that was under him, conceived an impossible thought, to place his throne higher than the clouds above the earth, that he might become equal in rank to my power. And I threw him out from the height with his angels, and he was flying in the air continuously above the bottomless. And then on the third day I commanded the earth to make grow great and fruitful trees, and hills, and seed to sow, and I planted paradise and enclosed it, and placed as armed guardian flaming angels, and thus I created renewal. And so you can see that this goes back to the second day, when the firmament incidentally was put into place as a impenetrable barrier to, in my opinion, to lock in the fallen angels into this time-space dimensionality, but to also separate them and to place a barrier between them and what is the Most High God, the throne room and the heavenly temple, of which they are no longer allowed to be in proximity. And so, again, these are the rebel angels, the fallen angels, before the Nephilim, before even the modern creation of humanity. So I hope that helps you to understand. All right, we're going to return back to the testimony of Credo Mutwa. I've got lots I want to be able to cover through. And so, but when the Chitauli came, human beings became divided both spiritually as well as by language. And then human beings were given strange new feelings by the Chitauli. Human beings started to feel unsafe, and so they started making villages with very strong fences of wood around them. Human beings started becoming country makers. In other words, they started creating tribes and tribal lands which had borders which they defended against any possible enemy. Human beings became ambitious and greedy, and they wanted to acquire wealth in the form of cattle and seashells. And another thing the Chitauli forced human beings to do, they forced human beings to mine into the earth. The Chitauli activated human women and made them to discover minerals and metals of certain types. Women discovered copper, women discovered gold, and women discovered silver. And eventually they were guided by the Chitauli to alloy these metals and to create new metals which had never existed in nature before. Metals such as brass and bronze and others. And let me just add here that we know, according to the book of Enoch, that even before the fall of the Watchers, that this had been done, and that weapons and the construction, the mining, and the creation of weapons of war, that this was taught to humankind. And so nothing new under the sun. All of that had happened during the time of the Watchers had taken place previously with the rebel angels, the fallen angels, and pre-Adamic humanity. Now, the Chitauli further removed the sacred rain bringing mist from the sky, and for the first time since creation, human beings looked up and saw stars, and the Chitauli told human beings that they had been wrong in believing that God dwelt under the earth. Remember, well, actually, I covered this in a show, but I had talked about how when the earth became without form and void, that the thick mist, this fog that had encompassed the earth, that because of that you were unable to see into the night sky or to even see the luminaries. That it was like a time of just always drizzling mist. But then after the destruction of the First World Age, that's when there started to be rain and storm systems, and the sun and the stars and the moon were seen for the first time. And it's interesting because I wrote about this in my book, and this is exactly what Credo says. And I'll just remind you that chapter 8, and Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shield and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments and the use of antimony and the beautifying of the eyelids. So, these same things were taught by the rebel angels to what is the pre-Adamites. All right. Now, all these things, if you bring them together, they show that whether people laugh at this or not, whether people scoff at this or not, there is a certain power that is guiding we human beings towards the dark river of self-destruction. And the sooner the many of us become aware of this, the better perhaps we might be able to deal with it. Martin, do you believe that these beings are around the world equally, or are they primarily focused in Africa? Credo, sir, I believe that these creatures are everywhere on earth, and with respect, sir, although I hate talking about myself so much, I am a person who has traveled to many parts of the world. I have been to your country, the United States, sir. I have been to Australia, I've been to Japan, amongst other countries. And no matter where I have gone, sir, I have found people telling me about creatures like this. For example, in 1997, I visited Australia. I traveled a lot to try and find the black people of Australia, the Aborigine. And when I did find them, they told me a number of things that astonished me very, very much. The same things that I'd found in Japan, I found in Taiwan. Everywhere there are still shaman and traditional healers. You find these amazing stories. Now let me tell you, sir, what I found in Australia alone. That the Australian Aborigine people who call themselves the Kuri, which means our people, the Kuri people of Australia, believe in a great creating god called Bayami, sir. A Kuri shaman, in fact, several of them, drew me a picture of this Bayami, and one of them showed me a rock painting representing this strange creator god who came out of the stars. And when they placed their drawing in front of me, what they showed me was a Chitauli. I recognized it from my African initiation. It had a large head, it had large eyes, which were stressed by the artist. It had no mouth, and it had long arms and incredibly long legs. Sir, this was a typical depiction of a Chitauli, which I knew from my own people in Africa. I asked myself, why? Here I am in a country many thousands of miles away from Africa, and here am I seeing a being known as the Bayami, or the Bimi, who is a creature with which I am the African am familiar. Amongst the Native American people, sir, I found, for example, amongst certain tribes in America, tribes such as the Hopi people and those people who stay in those buildings called a pueblo, I found that these people, they've got what are called kachina creatures, where people wear masks and disguise themselves as certain creatures. And some of these kachinas are very, very tall with a huge round head, exactly as we have in Africa. I found similar creatures in America. In Africa, we call these creatures igwugu, or we call them by another name called chinyawu. The kachina of the Native American people and the chinyawu of our people are identical beings. Now, why should this be when we're American Native people and Africans in contact? When? This is one of the greatest mysteries of all time, sir. It is one of the many things that I found throughout the world which left me utterly amazed. There are such creatures, and the sooner skeptics among us face up to this fact, the better it shall be. Why is humankind not progressing? Why are we running around in a great circle of self-destruction and mutual destruction? People are basically good. I believe this. People don't want to start wars. People don't want to destroy the world in which they stay. But there are creatures, or there is power that is driving we human beings towards self-annihilation. And the sooner we recognize this, the better. I think that is very well said. All right, I'm skipping down. To another portion. All right. I don't care what skeptics say. Please forgive me when I really get hot under the collar. I don't care what skeptics say, but there is a force destroying Africa, and I am not buying the nonsense that it is the bankers of the IMF and other big banks. You don't kill the goose that gives you the golden egg, so why would the bankers want to destroy Africa? There is another force behind these people, a terrible alien force which does things behind the scenes, and the sooner we recognize this, the better. It is very common for human beings who are in trouble to blame forces other than those inside themselves. But I have studied the situation in Africa since the end of the Second World War and before, and I have evidence that points to an alien force at work in Africa. All right, I'm skipping down again a little bit. Man is struggling to become a more advanced, more caring being. And the aliens are not going to take this lying down. They are going to cause us to kill each other again. And I am worried about what is going to happen. We believe, sir, that the Mantindanani the tormentors, the Greys, are really servants of the Chitauli, which, that's the Greys seem to be automatons. And it is the reptilian, the dragon lords, which are utilizing them. I would also invite people to check out the Farsight, the remote viewing people on the construction of the pyramids, that they also speak of this praying mantis type alien extraterrestrial reptilian race that ruled over and imposed and was trying to enslave the pre-Adamite races, and that caused them to create those structures, which it's interesting that this is also revealed in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which, I had promised to read that one passage, and so let me do that really quickly. From the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. This is the 8th tablet. Let me find the perfect. Oh, I pulled up the wrong one. Hold on. That was 12. Okay. Now, again, consider what I've been saying and what Credo's been talking about, what I've been reading from, and then consider this passage from the Emerald Tablets. I mean, this absolutely nails it. Speak I of ancient Atlantis, speak of the days of the kingdom of shadows. Speak of the coming of the children of shadows. Out of the great deep were they called by the wisdom of earthmen, called for the purpose of gaining great power. Far in the past, before Atlantis existed, men there were who delved into darkness using dark magic, calling up beings from the great deep below us. Forth came they into this cycle. Formless were they of another vibration and existing unseen by the children of earth men. Only through blood could they have formed being. Only through man could they live in the world. In ages past, when they were conquered by masters and driven below to the place whence they came. But some there were who remained hidden in the spaces and plains unknown to man. Lived they in Atlantis as shadows, but at times they appeared among men, when the blood was offered, for they came they to dwell among men. In the form of man they amongst us, but only to sight were they as our men. Serpent-headed when the glamour was lifted, but appearing to man as men among men. Crept they into the councils and taking forms that were likened to men, slaying by their arts the chiefs of the kingdoms, and taking their form they rule over man. Only by magic could they be discovered. Only by sound could their faces be seen. Sought they from the kingdom of shadows to destroy man and to rule in his place. But know ye, the masters were mighty in magic, able to lift the veil from the face of the serpent, able to send him back to his place. Came they to man and taught him the secret, the word that only a man can pronounce. Swift then they lifted the veil from the serpent and cast him forth from the place among men. Yet beware, the serpent still liveth in a place that is open at times to the world, Unseen they walk among thee, in places where the rites have been said. And again, as time passes, onward shall they take the semblance of men. Remember, Daniel, they shall try to intermingle themselves amongst the seed of men. I mean, this is fully what this passage is talking about and revealing. All right, continuing with Credo. And that they, contrary to what white people think a wrong thing, sir, many that the Mantindanani are experimenting with us. They are not, I repeat, they are not. Anyone who has been through the hells of these beings will tell you that there's nothing experimental in what they do. There's a cold-blooded resolve, and they are not doing what they do to us for themselves. They are doing what they do to us for a greater creature than they are. Which, again, he's talking about the graves. Okay, yeah, I have to skip. I was considering reading you the portion of the abduction, but we don't have time to do that. I want to ensure that I get to the last portion. And so we'll continue with this. Because, sir, when I get caught by the Mantindani, you become so traumatized, your life becomes so changed. You become so embarrassed and ashamed of yourself. You develop a self-hatred which you cannot understand. And there are subtle changes in your life which make no sense to you. You develop a strange love for humankind. You want to shake everybody by the shoulders and say, hey, wake up, people. We are not alone. I know we are not alone. And you develop a feeling that your life is no longer your own. And furthermore, you become compelled with a strange edge to move from place to place, to travel. You become worried about the future. You become worried about people. And another thing, sir, you develop knowledge which doesn't belong to you. You develop an understanding of space, an understanding of time and creation which makes no sense to you as a human being. It is a state after your terrible torture, after substances have been removed from you. Some kind of exchange takes place where you suddenly know things that the Mentindani, which those are the reptilian rulers, would know. The tormentors is what it means, which ordinary human beings do not know. But, sir, I know that the sharing of God often happens even when, for example, one time in 1966 in South Africa, I was arrested and rather savagely interrogated by the security police. It was that time when every black intellectual, no matter who he or she was, had a visit from these really nasty guys who put you to torture, sometimes who used to put electrical devices on you and ask you questions and so on. Sometimes when these human beings were torturing you, you often used to sense what they were thinking. Sometimes when you're being tortured by human beings, not by the Mantindanani, only there is a transference of thought. For example, when a particularly nasty secret policeman was coming to beat you, you knew what he was thinking even before he burst into the room in which you were held. You knew that he was coming, and you knew exactly what he was thinking and what he intended to do to you. So this is why I say the strange things that flood my mind. And what flooded my mind on that day were visions from the mind of the Mantindanani. Since that time, I am a man of only very limited education. I found it hard to speak, let alone to write English. I take a long time to say things which people of better English would say in a few words, but my hands are capable of making things which nobody ever taught me. I can make engines, rocket engines that actually work. I make guns of any type I wish, and all people who know me will tell you this, and Mr. David Icke, sir, might show you pictures of what I've done around my new home. I've even made large robots out of scrap iron, and some of these robots are going to work. I don't know where I acquired this knowledge from. And since that terrible day, the visions I have seen since I was a child, and the ordinary impressions which I have as a shaman have grown much, much more intense. I don't know why, and I want to know the reason why, but I can tell you, sir, that these creatures, which people wrongly call aliens, are not aliens at all. Over many years of looking into this thing, trying to understand it, I can tell you this, that the Mantandanani and the other kinds of alien beings that our people know about are sexually compatible with human beings. The Mantandanani are capable of impregnating African women. And I have come across many cases of this during the last 30 years or so. For example, according to our culture, abortion is regarded as worse than murder. And if a tribal woman from a rural area in South Africa is found to be pregnant by some unknown person and then her pregnancy disappears, that, sir, relative to that woman accuses her of having committed abortion, and yet she denies this, of course. And because of the fight that results between her and her relatives, the husband's relatives, then she challenges these people who are accusing her to take her to a Sangoma, that is, a person like myself. The Sangoma will sometimes examine the woman, and if the Sangoma finds that the woman had been pregnant and had somehow had her fetus removed, a thing which, when it is done by the Mantandanai, results in specific injuries to the woman which anyone who experiences can recognize, then the Sangoma knows that the woman is telling the truth. Also, the smell which clings to people who have been through the hands of the Mantandanani, that meticulous man which is unforgettable, always clings to all the women who have been impregnated by the Mantandanani, no matter how much perfume or powder they try to use. So that is why many such cases land on the doorstep of my life. A Sangoma brings such people to me in large numbers because they think I am the best one to help in such problems. So in the last 40 years or so, I have received many women who have actually been impregnated by the Mantandanani, and their pregnancies mysteriously terminated, leaving the woman feeling defiled, feeling guilty, and rejected by her family. It becomes my duty to convince the family of the woman's innocence, to try and heal the terrible spiritual and mental, as well as physical trauma that the woman has undergone, and to otherwise help her and her members of the family, and to forget what happened. No, sir. If these aliens are from a faraway planet, why are they able to impregnate women? And why did that strange creature, which was naked with red pubic hair, which climbed over me on that working table, why did it have an organ which, though slightly different from that of a normal woman, was still a recognizable female organ? He's talking about the abduction that he went through and how this alien creature had sexual relations with him to extract his seed. And this is what many, abductees, they speak about as having happened to them. Sometimes it's just, the machines that are used to take the seed from you. The creature's organ was in the wrong place. It was slightly more in the front where that of a normal woman is between the legs, but it was recognizable and it looked like a female organ. It had hair like a woman's organ. So, sir, I believe that these so-called aliens don't come from far away at all. I believe they are here with us, and I believe that they need substances from us, just as some of us human beings use certain things from wild animals, such as monkey glands, for certain selfish purposes of our own. I believe, sir, that we should study this dangerous phenomena very, very clearly and with objective minds. Far too many people fall into the temptation of looking upon these aliens as supernatural creatures. They are just solid creatures, sir. They are like us, and they, furthermore, I'm going to make a statement here which will come as a surprise. The gray aliens, sir, are edible. Now, I'm not going to go into that story either, but as I said, he had a supernatural experience in ingesting and eating the flesh of a gray alien. The Mantandanani are not the only alien beings that we Africans have seen and know about and have got stories to tell about. Many, many centuries ago, before the first white man came to Africa, we African people encountered a race of alien beings which looked exactly like the European white men who were going to invade Africa in our future. These alien creatures are tall, some of them are rather well built, like athletes, and they have slightly slanting blue eyes and high cheekbones. And they have got golden hair, and they look exactly like the Europeans of today. With one exception, their fingers are beautifully made, long and like those of musicians and artists. Now, these creatures come to Africa out of the sky in craft which look like the boomerang of the Australian people. And now, when one of these craft comes down to land, it creates a whirlwind of dust, which makes a very large sound indeed, like that of a tornado. In the language of some African tribes, a whirlwind is Zungar Uzungo. Now, our people gave several names to these white-skinned aliens. They called them the Wazungu, a word which loosely means God, but literally means people of the dust devil, or of the whirlwind. And our people were familiar with these Wazunga from the start. They saw them, and they saw that some of them, in fact, many of these Wazunga, carry what appears to be a sphere made of crystal or glass, a sphere which they always playfully bounce like a ball in their hands. And when a force of warriors tries to capture a Wazunga, the Wazunga throws this ball into the air, catches it in his hands, and then disappears. But some Wazunga were captured by Africans in the past and forcibly kept prisoner in the villages of chiefs and in the caves of shamans. The person who had captured the Muzunga, as he is called in singular, had to make sure that he kept the glass globe well hidden from the Wazungu. So long as he kept the globe hostage, the Muzungu could not escape. And when Africans saw the real Europeans, the white men from Europe, they transferred to them the name Wazungu. Because we met the people from Europe, we Africans, we had met white-skinned Wazungu, and we transferred the name Wazungu to the real Europeans from these aliens. Now, in the Zulu language, we call a white man Umlungu. Now, the word Umlungu means exactly the same as Wazungu, a god or a creature which creates a big whirlwind underground. In Zaire, called now the Democratic Republic of the Congo, white people are called Watende or Walende. This again means a god or a white creature. And the word Watende not only is used to refer to the pink-skinned alien, but is also used to refer to the field Chitauli. In Zaire, which shamans talk fearfully about the lords who control the earth, they refer to them not as the Chitauli, but they refer to them euphemistically as the Watende wa Muindo. That is, the white creature which carries a light, because at night the Chitauli's forehead eyes glow like red lights in the dense bush. They glow like the rear lights of an automobile in the dense bush. So Watenda wa Muindu, the white creature of the light, that is what the Chitauli are called in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. There are said to be over 24 other alien creatures, sir, that we Africans know about, but I will tell you briefly now about only two. Now, this is interesting what I'm about to read. I'm going to have to read fast because I need to get to the last portion before the end. But this is about the Bigfoot type creature, which is called the primitive worker in the Sumerian text. Sir, in the country called Zimbabwe, where I had my encounter in 1959, there is also another creature. This is the most amazing creature. And I saw it once, and so did several other people, some black and some white, who were with me. This creature is a huge creature and shaped exactly like a gorilla, but it is unlike a gorilla, which often walks on its feet as well as on its knuckle. The creatures I'm talking about, sir, stand 8 to 9 feet high and is built exactly like a gorilla, but its body is very powerful. Its shoulders are very wide, its neck is very thick. It is covered with thick, rough fur like no other wild animal in Africa. It is a humanoid creature with thighs and legs and feet, as well as arms and hands which look exactly like those of a human being, only covered with a heavy mat of dark brown fur. This creature, sir, is also known as Ogo by the people of Zimbabwe, and schools of people have seen this creature hundreds over the many generations. Some of these creatures have been seen right here in South Africa, in isolated bushy and mountainous places, and these ogre are detail for detail exactly like what the Native American people of the northwestern United States call a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot. In fact, I say it is the same creature, and we have it right here in southern Africa. It is also exactly the same creature, but with a totally different skin color, as the one is seen by the people of Nepal on the slopes of the Himalayan mountains, the creature that is called a Yeti. Now then, the last creature, sir, a creature which is so well known in South Africa and elsewhere in Africa, that if you mention its name, people smile. It is called a tokolashi. Every African knows what a tokolashi is. Some call it tikoloshi. It looks like a very nasty looking teddy bear in appearance, and its head is like that of a teddy bear, but it has got a thick, sharp, bony ridge on top of its head. The ridge goes from above its forehead on the back of its head, and with this ridge it can knock down an ox by butting it with its head. This creature causes the black people in certain places to raise their beds on bricks, one brick laid on top of the other, one about 3 feet above the ground. And you find this all over South Africa. This tokoloshi likes to play with children and has been seen hundreds of times by school children in various parts of South Africa, even in recent times. Sometimes it will terrorize children by scratching them as they sleep, leaving long parallel scratches on the child's back, and upon a child's thighs, scratches that become infected and itch terribly. All right, I have got to skip down to the very last part. Nobody can tell me that aliens don't exist. Let somebody tell me what is the meaning of this hole in my side. Let somebody tell me why it is that after I had been mated to that strange creature in that strange place, my organ of manhood swelled horribly, and for many years after that, I couldn't make love to an ordinary woman properly. Why, if that was a figment of my imagination, how can a figment of one's imagination leave you with scars and cracks on your male organs, some of which have not healed to this date? Let such people answer me that question. We must investigate, sir, because there is every sign that the alien creatures sharing this planet with us are getting desperate. Why? Because you see, there is a great fight shaping up, and anyone who thinks deeply about such things can see this fight coming. It tells you that after many thousands of years of being dominated by alien creatures, human beings are starting to fight back. Human beings are starting to care about the world in which they live and in which they find themselves. But the aliens, the Chitauli, the Mantindani, call them what you will, are not going to take that lying down. They are going to punish us as they did centuries before. The aliens once destroyed a nation whose name has come down to us Africans, the nation of Amari. It is said that the kings of Amari, this fabulous country which we believed lay beyond the setting of the sun, were refusing to do what the Chitaulis were telling them to do. The kings at that time were refusing to sacrifice their children to the Chitauli. They were refusing to make war on fellow human beings in order to sustain the Chitauli with their God's image. It is said that the Chitauli brought down a fire from heaven. They took fire from the sun itself and they used it to burn that great civilization away. They caused earthquakes and tidal waves and destroyed the great civilization of the red people of the long green hair, who are said to have been the first people ever to be created on this earth. It is said that the Chitauli allowed only a few surviving people to escape the destruction of Amariri, and that they are prepared to do this again in the very near future. All right, I have to skip down to the last part. Oh, goodness. There's so much more I wanted to share, but I don't have time. Okay, I'm going to the very last portion. There's a whole portion about the deep underground bases. But I don't have time. Sorry. You'll just have to get the book. I have all this included in there. Now, there's another thing, sir. It is that one of the things that the Chitauli like to do in their underground caves, where many fires are always kept ablaze. We are told that it is when a Chitauli gets sick and start to lose a large area of skin on its body, it's said that there's a disease that the Chitauli suffer from which causes them to lose large areas of the skin, leaving only raw flesh. This story is important too, but I'm going to just summarize. It's about, well, I'll just read this portion. Then, when the girl escapes, she runs, but she is pursued over a long distance underground by flying creatures, which are made of metal, and she is recaptured when she reaches the height of fear and exhaustion. Then she is laid on an altar, usually a rough rock flat on top. Then she is cruelly sacrificed, sir, and her blood is drunk by the sick Chitauli, which then recovers. But the girl must not be sacrificed until she is very, very frightened, because if she is not frightened, it is said that her blood will not save the sick Chitauli. It must be the blood of a very frightened human being indeed. Now, this habit of chasing a victim was also practiced by ordinary African cannibals, sir. In Zululand, in the last century, there were cannibals who used to eat people, and their descendants, even today, will tell you, if they trust you, that the flesh of the human beings who has been frightened and made to run over a great distance while trying to escape tastes far better than the flesh of someone who was simply killed. Oh, goodness. There's a portion of the story that talks about all the missing children and the deep underground bases, these creatures that actually have horns, but I don't have time. It even tells you about the different types of Chitauli, the ones that are called the royal dragons that have horns, and those that don't. There's a talk about an underground city. Let me read this passage before getting to the last part. Because we are told that after the great war that they fought with God, they became cold in their blood, and they cannot stand freezing weather, which is why they require human blood. And also they require fire always to be kept working where they are. And this is, again, talking about the deep underground bases. But I need to get to the last part, as this part will summarize it all with hope. All right, we're at the last portion. Well, it is said, and I believe this to be true, that there is for lack of a better way of putting it, there is a war between light and dark, good and evil on this planet. Yes, sir. Yes, there is. Martin. And there certainly is a God in his universe, a God of light and justice. Credo Mutwa. Yes, sir. Martin. How do you view the intervention of God through his hosts, through his representatives? In all things there must be a balance, and that includes on planet Earth, as above, so below. How do you see? For many readers, they can read about this all, and if it sounds very frightening and very almost hopeless, and yet there certainly is hope. So I would like to end this interview on a message of hope. Credo Mutwa. Yes, please, sir, there is hope. Look, first of all, there is a God above us, and this God is more real than most of us believe. God is not a figment of someone's imagination. God is not something dreamt up by old men and old women in prehistoric times. God exists, sir, but standing between us and God are creatures who claim to be gods. And these creatures we must get rid of in order to get closer to God. Sir, I have lived a long and very strange life, and I can tell you that there is a God and he is intervening. However, we see God's intervening as slow. But wait, who would have thought that less than 30 years ago, not one person cared about the environment? Who put this sudden godliness within all of us? Today, sir, people everywhere in the world are standing and fighting for the rights of women and for the rights of children. Who has put these ideas into our minds? Not the Chitauli, not any demonic entity. It is God acting in the shadow and making us strong and able to resist these ugly creatures. You see, sir, God seems to work slowly in our eyes because God lives in a time sphere totally different from our own. God is there, God is working, and it is God, sir, who for the first time in our existence is making us aware of these things, making us aware that on this world we are not alone, and that we must not be solely responsible for our actions. And we must neutralize these alien beings who for years have led us around in circles. Human beings have never known any real progress, sir, because there have been forces that have been stopping us from reaching our rightful position in the universe. And I mean the Chitauli. I mean the Mantindanani. I mean the Midzuyumu. We must stop regarding these creatures as superhuman creatures. They are just parasites who need us more than we need them. And only a fool will ever deny the fact that we are not the only intelligent species of beings that this planet has produced. All over Africa, there is overwhelming evidence that once There were gigantic human beings who walked this planet. In the days of the dinosaur, there are footprints in granite, each one 6 foot long by 3.5 feet wide. Footprints of mature human beings, sir, which date back thousands of years, millions of years. Where did these giants go? Who knows? The dinosaurs may have produced an intelligent race, a race which deceives us into thinking that it comes from the stars, when it in fact is part of this planet on which we live. There is hope. It is very bright. A Christ child is being born in all of us, but like all deaths, the death of the light child, the death of the old self prior to transfiguration into Christness is going to be attended by great danger, as the enemy is going to be driven into desperation. The enemy will make mistakes and we will conquer him in God's sacred name. That is what I believe, sir, and that is what I'm going to hold on believing until my last breath. And so, we're going to end it there. I just wanted to leave on a message of hope, and I think that the way that Credo Mutwa ended this interview, that it was a perfect thing. Let me read one more last paragraph since we have a few more minutes. He also says, "We will overcome. We will overcome, but skeptics must stop laughing, and fools must stop calling these aliens God. There is only one God, and he or she or it is the one who created us and not some imposter who came from somewhere else to hide behind us and to drink our children's blood." And wow, there is more, but all right, last paragraph. Exactly, and also to confront people with the fact that there is no reason to fear anything. If we go from a perspective of making information available, this should be available to every single person on this blooming planet. Why the hell are they trying to threaten you to keep quiet? It's so ridiculous. Let it be. Stop assassinating and ridiculing and destroying people by churning up fear. This is the perspective I come from. And I'm sure David as well, and obviously you as well, do too. I don't have fear anymore. It's time that we speak out and that we acquire a consciousness of a global, common consciousness and get this thing to the front. And I couldn't agree more. And so I want to thank you, Credo Mutwa, for your stance in siding with truth and revealing this incredible information. And God rest your soul, brother. I hope that you are in heaven and that you are enjoying paradise. And hope that we can all join together in reunion at some point. And I hope that all of you have enjoyed this story and this particular information. I do believe it to be very powerful, and without a doubt, it is a confirming witness to, again, the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, as it even now plays out, and that this war will continue to rage on until the harvest that comes with the second advent of Christ. And then the gig is up. God bless all. I'll be on with Rob tonight, midnight to 2 a.m. So please do join us. We'll be going into Genesis chapter 7 in our Genesis Revisited series. Be blessed all. Good night.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.
Okay.
We did have one question from Marie that said, what is the name of the book, please, Zen?
I am reading from the Pre-Adamite book, and so this information is found, the interviews that I've read from and have related in transcript and a couple of different shows. That is part of this particular Pre-Adamite book, and so all that is found with what will be the new release.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, on behalf of everyone in the chat, thank you for an awesome show, and we'll see you all later. Shalom.
Good night, all. Be blessed.